it could be a situation where, you know, it's supposedly a safe environment and people are at the zoo and something crazy happened. You could be in the wilderness and you happen to be with wildlife. You know, it's like some things we really can't explain. And I think that's when you have to use a lot of your instincts and discernment and just really be in touch with the spirit, man.
What is up, people? Welcome to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. Look, I know you are happy about this day. If you're not, you should be. You know why? Because it is the day that the Lord has made. And therefore, if you ain't rejoicing, then you probably ain't glad about it. So get that way. Facts. Well, people, if you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We definitely appreciate it. We got the fellas here today. We got Mr. Detroit Investor _ WCI. If you have not checked him out already, definitely go ahead and do that. We got Mr. Freedom in Christ Ministry on my right side over here. If you have not already checked out the page, if you haven't checked out Men 2.0, if you haven't showed up to a Sunday service, if you're in Southfield and you have not showed up to a Sunday service yet and you've been watching this, look, come on now, get it together. But anyway, today we got a subject that is a little bit different than if you were coming for the heavy stuff today, then just wait till next week. But we don't know where it's gonna go. I sent a message in the chat, and I think the title I said was like faulty projections, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so essentially, like not too long ago, I was in Alaska. I was telling them that I went to Alaska. And I was there for a project. So I was filming, doing all this other stuff. But I'm like, we're in Alaska. I got to go see. There's a few things that I got to see. First, I got to see the Northern Lights. Two, I got to see some snow. I got to find out like what it's like around here. It's cold. And then three, I got to see a moose. I got to see a moose while I'm here. And we were checking everything off of the box. Everything you need to do in Alaska, we were getting it done. We was in a cabin. I mean, the full Alaskan experience. We captured it. But the one thing that was left on that list was a moose. And so we were driving down the streets. We were gonna go to one of those it was a national park. But we were keeping our eyes peeled just in case we saw one. And so on the way there, driving down the road, I just so happened, the guy who I was with, his name is Brandon. He was talking about something, and then out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, wait, I think there's a moose. And it was on the side of the road. And we stopped, turned this car around fast, went back, parked on the side of the road, and then we got out. We got our stuff because we had our gear with us. So we walked out with our camera stuff, and we're like, oh, man, we about to capture the moose. And so he was pumped about it. And so as we're walking up, and I saw there was a big one, and then there was a smaller one, but still big. And so I'm like, man, we got it. I was looking at it through the camera, and I'm like, this just is not good. Like we look far away. This doesn't look like Animal Planet. This doesn't look like National Geographic. We have to get closer. And so I started walking up, each step, getting closer and closer to this moose. And so in my camera lens, you could see that I was getting really close, and like I wasn't all the way like zoom. I didn't have no crazy zoom on my camera. And so I actually had to get closer to get a better shot of this animal. And so I was walking up, and I ended up getting like a really good shot of the moose. And I found out I think this was a mother, because next to the moose was its child. And so I got a great shot of the moose out here in the wild. Mission accomplished, checked off the box. What happened afterwards, because we ended up we recorded a few different things with the moose. We were there for a minute. Like it wasn't no there, run away. We went up, we shot, we did the whole 9, and then we left. And so, but later on, I showed the footage because I had made into an ad for the company with it. And so, but afterwards, we had shown it, and then they were like, wait, what were you guys using to get that? They thought we had some sort of like crazy zoom on the camera. And I said, no, I just walked up to it. Because at the end of the clip, you can see the moose kind of look up and like almost like, what's going on here? And so they were like, whoa, you were that close to the moose? I'm like, yeah. And so after that, they proceeded to let me know. And the guy who was with, he was actually, what I didn't tell you was that he was like a good 25 feet away. He wasn't like 20, 50 feet. He was not even close. And so they were like, yo, that is, mooses kill people all day, every day. And they are just straight up serial killers to people. And they will maul you over and all blah, blah. And they were telling me all this stuff about like how dangerous moose are. But at the time, I'm like, I've got nothing but peace right now, getting closer to this moose. Now, mind you, I wasn't like shoulder to shoulder, like I wasn't bumping into it or anything like that. I was like maybe 2-3 arm lengths away from this animal, okay? And I was getting the shot. But I'm thinking like, man, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I pray every single day before all of the stuff that I'm doing. So I'm like, I'm good on this. And so I walk up and then they're telling me about like how dangerous they are, how dangerous everything is. And then I started to think about like okay, so the next time that I get in contact with a moose, I'm going to be thinking about all the stuff that you're afraid of, all the stuff that I had enough faith to overcome in that moment. You now put that on me. Now I'm more aware of the stuff that could potentially go wrong in X, Y, and Z. And I know that there's good in it and there's good intentions in it, but it's also, you just put your fear onto me. And now I'm going to be thinking about this moving forward. And it's like, I was not afraid of this animal at no level. Like at 0 levels was I afraid of this animal. I'm like, if something had to happen, it's going to happen. We're going to be duking it out on the street. But if we get there, then that's what happens. But faulty projections is what we're talking about.
I got you. For one, if you try to duke it out with a moose, you're going to lose. If you don't have this, just to be clear, that's not a fight. I know you might be pretty handy there, Martell, but I my money on the moose.
His money's on the moose. He sold me out. My guy.
I'm just being real. Well, as you were saying, telling the story at the end there, that fear piece, I was just thinking about how, there's such thing called healthy fear too. But so you gain knowledge. So I don't know, that projection, I don't know if that's projection of fear, what you got, or was it just you gained knowledge? So, and when you talk about faulty projection, it's like, is it the information you're getting healthy and right, or is it faulty? Because sometimes you can get a projection and you gain knowledge, and then sometimes you can get what you call a faulty projection, which is coming from a faulty source or don't apply. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you mean, though. And, it's like, of course, I reference the kids a lot because I go through these iterations with my kids where I'm constantly watching them and I'm thinking about a potentially dangerous outcome based on their action. But then they want to live life. They have to live life. And a lot of times I'm surprised, like, oh, okay, that actually went well. They learn something. And then I have to constantly remind myself, like, you know what? That's life. That's really what we're here for. Like, you have to test your boundaries, because it could be a situation where, it's supposedly a safe environment and people are at the zoo and something crazy happens, or you could be in the wilderness and you happen to be with wildlife. It's like some things we really can't explain. And I think that's when you have to use a lot of your instincts and discernment and just really be in touch with the spirit, man. Because if the energy was off, the moose was growling at you and kind of like, letting you know, like, hey, you take one step closer, you probably wouldn't have gotten that close. But, you probably felt like, hey, for some reason, this feels okay, even though everybody else is like, man, I wouldn't do that, because it's plenty of stuff in life that people will tell you like, hey, I don't think you should do that. But like, like we were talking about earlier when this topic came up, a lot of that is people projecting their fears based on their experiences on you. And that's what we have to be careful about, because there is a such thing, like you said, Rodney, as a healthy knowledge base, but it's also knowledge. It can be very constrained to direct experiences. And if your experiences were limited, you're gonna, pass on a limited experience. If my experience, like I said, once again, I'm going through this in real time with kids where these kids are being raised with constant technology. I didn't grow up in an era like that. So I'm having to adjust and figure out, oh, what is this? What is that? You have all types of fears associated with it, but I can't not let them live life based on my fears.
That's the thing. Like, it is, I think it's 100% like a balance. The reason that I wanted to particularly say that is because I knew we could get to both sides of the outcome of it. Because it's like, yeah, there's like a certain not knowing how dangerous something is dangerous, and then, but understanding it, but not having a plan, not preparing for it, not having peace about the situation, and just completely refusing something, that in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas of life, that can make sure that you never do what you're supposed to do. And so it's like, if we take it to, like, some people, you might hear advice from some dude who's been through 10 marriages, and he'd be like, look, women ain't nothing. They ain't got nothing for you. They are created for just this and this. And if you ain't getting that out of her, then go on somewhere. And then you might believe that. And then that's how you might take that thought into every situation with a female for the rest of your life without testing whether whatever they said was ever even valid or not, because someone just put that thought onto you. And so it's like, I understand, like what Mike was saying, like it wasn't a sprint forward. Okay. I didn't just get out of the car, jump on the moose and start, and it's like, we're going for a ride. No, that wasn't the situation. It was, I took a step. Okay. I took a step. Oh, okay. I think we okay. I took a step. I said, Jesus, we good? Okay. I'm gonna take another one. That step. And then we was good all the way up to the point where I'm like, this is the shot that I'm trying to get. And then backed up and everything was fine. And so, like, it wasn't like an abrupt thing. There was caution in it. Like, I didn't understand what the other dude had understood after what he was telling me about the story, like, how they kill people and this and that. I didn't know any of that. But I'm like, because this is unfamiliar territory, because this is an animal, I will be a little bit cautious.
So, I mean, I guess I hear what you're saying, Martell. And one thing you added in there too, you're like, hey, okay, Jesus, all right, am I good? What's going on? So you inquired, you checked in with the Spirit. And I guess
I'm trying to walk on water, Rodney.
Well, hey, I hear you. You gotta be focused on Jesus there. But but that's one thing that I think key though is that whole as you kind of go through something like that, you do have to check in. You got to be mindful of that. You might not be mindful of all the history, whatever somebody might project on you, but you got to make sure that, okay, am I on solid ground here? Am I seeing? Don't ignore the signs around you. You know what I'm saying?
One, I think the balance in between the two is, okay, we've got, I have this understanding before I go into the situation of what the potential downfalls could be. I know where there is danger, and maybe even I talked to somebody who's experienced, this same situation or scenario before, and they let me know about where the potholes are.
Knowing what you now, would you go get that close to another moose?
I might. I ain't gonna lie to you, Rodney. I ain't gonna lie to you. I might take another step because it's the way that I did it. I'm like, I know I've got enough runway here to do whatever. Like, I've got space, and because I've got this peace about the situation, I'm good on taking another step.
Public service announcement, first of all. This is not an endorsement for anybody to go walk up close to a moose. Okay. But let's examine what you said. I mean, you said a key thing. You checked in. You checked in with God. You checked in with the Spirit. Okay, am I on solid ground? Am I Am I out of line? Because you do, and you do have to check in. I mean, I don't care if you in a certain situation, you out at night, and you like, okay, I want to stop and get gas. You got to be like, okay, wait a minute. Should I be doing? Is the spirit telling me to do? Because sometimes the spirit will tell you, no, you need to keep moving. So, I mean, you can equate it kind of to that same thing. And if using the same example, people tell you, oh, you can't do nothing in Detroit. It's if you just step out your car, it's going to be problems. There's people like that. So that projection, I get it. I mean, I'm using that in place of the moose, but the point though is the same.
I would say not necessarily new Detroit, even though I'm in it still some of that, but very much so. Let's say rewind 10 years ago or any time before that. Basically, like the Detroit that I grew up in, right? That was always the stigma attached to it. Like, man, like when I used to go travel and people, oh yeah, where you from? Oh yeah, I'm from Detroit. From Detroit? Like, you mean Southfield, or you talking about like Taylor? Kind of close. I'm like, no, I'm from Detroit, like the real Detroit. And it used to be, people used to be astonished because that was the stereotype, right? And I mean, to a large part, a lot of people are still afraid of Detroit. And we used to have this joke where yeah, we can't come to Detroit. I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't, because the thing is, when you have that spirit of fear, you stand out. We used to walk, not the new downtown, but old downtown. You could tell if somebody was fearful. It's just the spirit spoke to you. You're like, man, that person, they must not be from around here. It's always very evident when somebody has that spirit. And so I think that's what we're really talking about. We're kind of using different examples, Martell talking about the moves, we're talking about Detroit. But what we're really talking about is the spirit, the spiritual element, because it really is like, in the Bible. It's funny because I was looking at scripture, and that's one of the things that is constantly reiterated in the word, where it's like, we're not supposed to have that spirit of fear. That's the humanness in us, but at the same time, it's not a license to be reckless either. And that's where you have to use that constant checking in and, okay, where are we at right now? Spiritually, where we at, God, am I good? And I think that's really just a blueprint and a baseline for life. And that's where people go wrong, where they don't check in. They're not in alignment with that spirit. To me, that's how you get off track.
And, we say in Detroit, but it's any city. I mean, I grew up in Chicago. You get the same thing. I was talking to somebody recently talking about they live in one of the suburbs of Chicago, but they're not from Chicago originally. And they're like, I don't ever go into the city. I'm like, well, why? Because, so much crime. I'm like, it's crime everywhere. But yeah, but that faulty projection, can take you away from experiences too. And that's the thing, you miss out on experiencing downtown Detroit or other parts of Detroit because you got a faulty projection. You got a fear that's hindering you. That, like getting that shot. You're not gonna get that shot. You'll get something that's worse. That's not what you want, but you're gonna settle for it because you're scared.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, to be honest, that's a part of one of my strengths, like business wise, where I can navigate. And it's not only did I live just like in a particular area, because like people from the west side, they're not most comfortable on the east side of Detroit. People from the east side, they don't really want to go to the west. I've lived on both areas. And so when I make my business decisions, I look at it like, well, money's green on both sides, and I look at the numbers and I know how to maneuver through the areas, because once again, it's very much so checking in with the spirit. Like I can ride down a block in the neighborhood and I can feel the energy of the block, and I can kind of tell like, okay, I like this block. This feels like Granny's on the corner. We having good cookouts in the summer. Like, you know, they're taking care of their grass. I see flowers. This is a good block versus the numbers may send me to another block saying, hey, this is a good area, but I'm not feeling the vibe there. You know, I'm just not feeling the energy. And I'm like, you know what? I'm good on this. You know, I think I'll just keep it pushing.
That's key right there, because it's like, I think about, you brought it to the spirit. I think about Joshua in the Old Testament and how before he went into battle, like God would lay out a plan. He'd be like, and then he'd say, and God would say, "Don't be afraid, have peace. I'll be with you." And then he'd go slay. He'd go take over like 5 different areas and territories and claim them for the Israelites. And it was like, it was time after time after time. And then after so many times of a thing happening, you kind of like, your faith gets built up from these things, from it going your way, because you have so much peace about it. And he got to the point where he literally asked God, he said, hey, could you hold the sun and the moon still so we can fight during the daylight still? This is Joshua. And God said, God let it happen. They said it was the first time God did that. He let it happen. And then that kind of mentality, that kind of faith, like, I mean, how do you get to the point where you even request such a thing? It's because so many times God gave you peace, and you could trust, you had faith, you had enough faith, and it was built up to the point where you could do something like that. And every time he went into battle, it was like he just called on, asked about, inquired of the Lord. And then when the peace came through, he knew he was good to go. And so he went. And so it's like what you were saying about, like, when you go, you told us before, like, you might prospect an area, right? And then, but you're checking X, Y, and Z. You got your list of things that you're checking, but you're also having a sense. It's another sense where it's like, is there peace about this? Before I go up to this door, right? Before I go into this house, interact with these people, is there a peace about it? Because, and if it's not there, even if the things were checked off the box, you let me know if I'm wrong. Even if the things are checked off the box, if that piece is not there, I don't think it's worth going still.
Yeah, no, 100%. You cannot. That's when you become unsafe. When you either ignore that spiritual element, or you just completely are oblivious to it. You know, before I got deeper in my faith walk, I used to call it like instincts. Like, man, I got amazing instincts, you know, just based on real life experiences. But now, you know, I know that's like it's like I call it like little angels, like whispering into your ear, like, you gotta listen. It's a whisper. It's not a don't go in there or don't do that. It's a feint with, like, hey, I don't know about this, dog. You know what I'm saying? You kind of, you know, I'm straight. Let's keep going. You know, it's not. I'm not feeling it, and it's kind of you have to work your way into a certain level. You don't get it, and that's why I think, you know, I'm thinking about the word wisdom right now. It's a difference between having knowledge and information versus having wisdom. You see what I'm saying? Like, wisdom is acquired through, you know, wise counsel, previous experiences, just knowledge base. It's like many things wrapped into one versus information. Like, now, you know, Google, we could both have the same answer. But if I've had years of experience to acquire that answer and somebody else just Googled it, odds are, if we continue on those roads, we won't have to keep having the same results. And that's where I think in today's society, things get very muddy, because a lot of people can easily access information. You know, everybody can Google, everybody has a Google, but that's not the same thing as having wisdom. And that's where it gets confusing.
You know how you grew up, how to do division the long way, you know, on paper. People might not even know what they look like now. But anyway, versus typing it into, you know, a calculator, or typing it on a computer, just getting the answer. You don't know how you got to that answer. It just popped up for you. So when you talk about wisdom, knowing how to do long division, you know how the whole process works. So you got a different view on it. You know what I'm saying? You can actually digest it a different way. You can see, how to get to the answer versus the answer being given to you.
And it's repeatable. It's repeatable. Anybody can get lucky and just kind of guess, but if you don't know how you got there, where it was like more so luck than anything else, you're not going to be able to replicate that. You're not going to be able to teach and bring other people along because you don't know how the heck you got there.
What will be good for the people listening in this particular episode is to redefine a few different terms, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not found anywhere in the Bible where it says that you need to be afraid. Every time I've read before someone went into battle, if God was with them, he said, don't be afraid. He said that was a thing that you should not be doing. And so fear, I don't think, is anything that you want. And so it's not something that you should be thinking, well, am I afraid here? Therefore, I should not. That's not really the check. That's not the box that you need to be looking for. It's like, do I have God's peace about this situation? Because that's a lot different, because what Mike was just saying was there's a wisdom, okay? And the thing is, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so having that understanding of like, okay, if God's got me, then therefore whatever is coming next is going to be all right. Having that going into any situation is better for you than any other scenario. No matter how much knowledge you have about a particular subject, you could literally, you could be going into, you might have a dream to start a business. You might be thinking about leaving a job. You might be thinking about getting a job. You might be thinking about dating someone, marrying somebody. But it's like all these different things. You could go read all of the books. You could do all of the Google searches. You could talk to all of the uncles and aunties who had done it before, the cousins, or that one that made it and he was successful in this thing, and talk to him directly. And then he gives you advice about stuff. You could talk to all of those people. But if you don't have God, you're still on a non-solid foundation, whatever the situation is, because they might all say go, but God might say no. And if God says no, it's not going to work.
No, you're absolutely right. And this, when you talk about, as far as in the Bible, one of the top commands that God tells us is do not be afraid. Throughout Old Testament, New Testament, you see, hear it all the time. So you're absolutely right about that. And you also, the point you made too about, hey, if God don't tell you to do it, going back to Mike, listen to that small voice, the Holy Spirit talking to him, and God speaking to us in different ways and checking in. I don't care how good it looked, to your point, Martell, it's not going to work out. It's going to go sideways. It could be a sunny day. It could be, everything perfect. And the Spirit telling you, you know what? You need to not be in this place right now. And if you don't listen, then you're going to play a part. So that faulty, getting back to the faulty projection piece, it starts whether we listening to God or listening to ignoring God. Either one. We either listening to him or ignoring him.
There's a difference between not having a spirit of fear and just being reckless. I think we just got to reiterate, because that sense of awareness was put into humans for a reason, and like I said, we really got to get back to studying history. I think that's one thing that I think is a shame in today's society, where we consume so much information, so much nonsense, so much gossip, who's doing what, who said what to, who cares, man? Like, go back and study some history, because humans in the beginning of time were living in much different elements than we live in today. You were living in elements with the wild. You might have a home that has really no barriers between you and wild elements. So yes, there was a sense of you need to be super aware so that you stay safe and survive and live. You fast forward, hundreds of years, we're not living, most of us aren't living in these type of elements. So our gauge on fear and awareness, it needs to be adjusted. And that's the part where I think where you see that spirit of high fear is prevalent, is where that gauge was never adjusted. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're scared of oh, we can't, no, don't go outside. You can fall and bump your head. Like, that's not what that's about. Yeah, can you fall and bump your head? Of course you can. But end of the day, what type of life are you gonna live if you can't do anything without being fearful of getting hurt, of missing out? You're basically gonna, a lot of people sabotage themselves before even trying something just because of the possibility of some type of hurt, pain, disappointment, and it's all in their head. It's like you haven't even done anything yet, but you're talking about 15 different scenarios of how it's not going to work out, and you haven't done anything yet. I see it all the time.
Mike, I think you just highlighted there's a difference between danger and risk. There's a big difference between those two things. I think you just laid it out right there. There's danger where something could actually go, like you are in immediate, something is real, you know? If we're afraid of something that's just made up in our mind, that's one thing. But if you're actually in a situation where things like someone has a gun to you, we're not talking about the same thing no more. You don't need to do a bunch of checks. It's right there. It's real, okay? But then there's another situation between that and, oh, this might go wrong if I give it a shot. Or, you know what, I'm not gonna talk to her because she's gonna reject me, or I don't want to go for that thing because I'm not gonna get it anyway. Those are completely different things. And I think you kind of laid it out where it's good to have that understanding of like what could potentially happen, but that also should give you enough to know what you should do and whether you should go or not.
And all that plays into where we started with this whole topic, faulty projection. All that plays into whether somebody's trying to put their fear upon us, causing us to hold back, whether we making sure we're not being reckless and making a decision and, disregarding the risk around. I mean, all that gets into what we do. And that projection, basically is going to dictate in a lot of ways what we're going to try to do or not try to do.
Well, cool. We all know what time it is. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you go ahead and do that. Housekeeping items, we got at Detroit Investor _WCI. Tell me what it's about.
Yes, sir. Just come check us out. We're just active in the community, active in real estate, active in inspiration. And we just want to, we want to recruit more people to be a part of the movement. So if you want to check us out, stop by on Instagram at Detroit Investor _WCI. If you want to support, we got some merch items. Like this one is a new drop. It says Relentless Pursuit. We got different taglines, rebuilding Detroit one house at a time, brick by brick, just different things. So yeah, definitely stop by.
Rodney?
All right. Hey, Med 2.0. We meet the second Saturday every month in Southfield. It's at the Freedom Center, which is located 28202 Franklin Road. That's for men looking to understand what their purpose is, understand what God designed it to do. It's the second Saturday every month. You can check us out at 10 a.m. We get out of there about 12, but you want to be on time because you don't want to miss any piece of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellas, well, there is ladies. There's a few ladies, but there are ladies. And it's not an industry where there's a bunch of them, but they are in there and they strong too. But if you're a roofer, okay, and you are currently having issues, and I've come in contact with a lot of you and I've kind of understood the process here, is where you might be buying leads from all different places, but those are faulty leads, or they might be shared leads. And so you got to talk to 50,000 people who don't want to talk to you. And they've talked to 50 other people already. And so they have no interest in what you have to say unless your price is zero. Okay. Then there's the next level of it where, you might be getting people into the door, but they're not showing up for you. Like they're saying they forget about stuff. You just reminded them 3 times, but they completely forgot about your appointment and everything. And so they're not showing up for you. And then there's the other level where you're sending somebody a quote or an estimate, but then after that, they're just kind of off to the wind, and you're expecting them to come back to you to tell you that they want to give you their money. These are all silly things, and you don't need to deal with it. Look, Focus 417 is an advertising agency, a digital advertising agency, but it's not just that. It helps you to actually get the most out of every single opportunity that you have with a prospect. I mean, I'm talking from the beginning, getting them out of the universe from cold all the way to the booked appointment, and then past the booked appointment to them being a customer for your business. We help you along the entire process, and we do it through video advertising. We're pretty gosh dang good at it. The numbers are looking right now, and they have been. And so if you want to know more information about that, go ahead into the description, press the link, book a call, and I'll talk to you about it. Now, with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. Make sure you subscribe if you have not done that already. I've said it a few times. This is the fourth time I'm saying it. If this is the fourth time I'm saying it and you ain't subscribed yet, I'm talking to you now. I'm just talking to you. And like it, share it with somebody else, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Fellas, peace.
Peace.